Picture this. You are packing your bag for the trip of a lifetime. You have your camera body, your batteries, your SD cards, but there is only one slot left in the foam padding. You have to make a choice. Do you pack the 50mm or the 85mm? Let's figure out which one deserves the spot in your bag. I've spent the last year or so shooting extensively with both of these lenses. I have taken them from controlled model shoots to chaotic, sweaty, vibrant streets of Southeast Asia. But in this video, I want to slow down and dive into the creative psychology behind these focal lengths, because it's not just about millimeters. It's about how you choose to see the world. Let's kick things off with the 85mm lens. Whether you are shooting f1.8 or f1.4 like on this lens, this lens, the 85mm, is traditionally hailed as the king of portraits. Why? Because it's a flattering machine. It slightly compresses facial features, making noses look a little smaller and faces look a little more proportional compared to the wide lenses. Wide-angle lenses introduce distortion. But the real superpower of the 85mm isn't just what it does to the face. It's what it does to the background. I call this lens the observer. You can even call it a sniper. When you are shooting travel or street photography or portraits or models, the 85mm allows you to be an observer rather than a participant. You can stand across the street comfortably far away and capture a candid moment without infiltrating the scene. This is a massive pro if you are a bit introverted or if you just want to capture people acting naturally. But my favorite thing about the 85mm is its ability to clean up a mess in the background. In my trip to Indonesia, I used this lens for capturing portraits in the streets. With the 85mm, I was able to compress that background, the noisy streets and the mess in the streets, the chaos. It isolated the subject so perfectly that the background didn't matter anymore. It just became a painting behind them. Similarly, in Bali, I had a shoot with women in traditional attire. The background had a lot of plantations and a few buildings. With the 85mm, I could step back and compress that background. The lens took all the messy foliage and melted it into a creamy wash of green. Okay, let's talk about 50mm. For all the beauty of the 85mm, I have to be honest with you. I find myself reaching for the 50mm most of the time. If the 85mm is the sniper rifle, the 50mm is a conversation. The 50mm focal length roughly approximates the field of view the human eye has, if you ignore our peripheral vision, This means that when you look at a photo taken at 50mm, it feels natural. It feels honest. It feels like you are actually standing there. This is why I prefer it for environmental travel photography. When I travel, I don't just want a photo of a pretty face. I want a photo of a person in their environment, in their world. I want the context. Then there is the issue of practicality. I did a model shoot in Germany, and because we didn't have much time, I stuck to 50mm for the entire shoot. I could come closer to take the portraits or step back to tell an environmental story. During my time to Bali, I found a traditional dress weaver working in a very small, cramped shop. It was dark, it was tight. I wanted to capture her working. If I had the 85mm on my camera, it would have been physically impossible to capture her with her environment and the loom. But with the 50mm, it was perfect. I could stand right there. I could frame her face, but I also got her hands and the texture of the wooden loom. The 50mm was wide enough to tell the story of where, but tight enough to keep the focus on who. And this brings me to my primary argument for the 50mm. Versatility through movement. With the 85mm, you are often, let's bring it here. With an 85mm, you are often locked into a specific framing. If you want a wider shot, you have to move far back, sometimes into traffic, sometimes into a wall. With a 50mm lens, you have the flexibility to zoom in with your feet. You want a tight portrait? Take 2 steps forward and boom, intimate and personal. Want an environmental shot? Well, boom again, boom twice. Take 2 steps back, now you have the full context of the street. There is an intimacy to the 50mm that 85mm lacks. To fill the frame with a 50mm lens, you have to physically get close to your subject. You have to engage. You have to smile. In my model shoots, I use the 50mm most of the time because it lets me talk to the model without having to shout from across the location. So, to wrap this up, why do I choose the 50mm? I own both. I use both. I use my Sigma 85mm f1.4 when I need a specific headshot or when the background is just too ugly to save. It is a specialized tool that does the job perfectly. I love this lens as well. However, if I'm walking out the door to document a trip, explore a city, or tell a story, the 50mm is on my camera. It forces you to compose more thoughtfully. It forces you to interact with your subject. It captures the world as it feels to be in it, rather than observing it through a telescope. Ultimately, the choice is yours. If you love the creamy, isolated background and prefer to keep your distance, the 85mm is your king. But if you want to be a storyteller, get a 50mm and don't be afraid to get close. And I know ultimately you will get both. Do let me know in the comments below, what lens do you like to use, 50mm or 85mm, and why? These comments normally help other viewers with more opinions to learn from. All right, that is it for me. I am going to go ice my legs because zooming with your feet sounds romantic until you have done it for 8 hours straight in tropical humidity of Indonesia. I will catch you in the next one. Until next time, Khodai Paman.